I'm Jigar Desai, and I'm a director of platforms at eBay. And a lot of people ask me a question that what does your team do, platforms team, what does it do? We have 2,000 to 3,000 developers at eBay who are churning out these applications. They're building the website. But there is a need for a foundation in the sense, who will do the OS settings? Who will tune the JVM? Who will choose the container? Who will do a performance analysis on a container? Who will actually write the application framework code? And who will provide enough tools for presentation tier? That's what my team does as a platform team. Essentially, we support the business and developers and make them agile and productive day after day. Now, eBay started around 1995, and it's been 17 years. We started pretty small, and today we are one of the biggest websites around. And there's a lot of changes that happened over 17 years. And to keep up with the scale and the velocity of the site, we went through quite a few evolution of platform as well. To say that almost 5 platforms that we went from 1995 to 2012. And everything served a purpose. The purpose was to keep the site up and scale. And this topic is about our journey of that last 17 years. And since this is a JavaScript conference, I'm going to focus a lot more on JavaScript. And I'll share the learnings from the past. I'll share where we stand today. And I'll share a little bit glimpse of how the future looks like. So let me start with a little bit about eBay. I think a lot of you may know about eBay, but I'll share some of the insider stuff as well. So what is eBay? It's a global online marketplace where buyers and sellers come together and they transact. They trade. They buy and sell things. And they buy and sell a lot of things. Like, if you look for spinach on eBay, you'll find 10,000 hits there. Shoes, accessories, electronics. We trade wide variety of products on eBay. And sometimes there are very weird products that get transacted on eBay. For example, a few years back, there were few towns that were sold on eBay, the entire towns that had streets and shops and everything around it. There was a missile base that was listed on eBay, and I believe somebody bought it. There was a MiG-21 jet that was sold on eBay for multi-million-dollar. So we sell and we trade a lot of weird stuff. And that's what makes it very, very, very exciting. All right, so what about some interesting stats that I promised in the beginning? Well, let's see. So at any point of time, today at least, we have 100 million active users, buyers and sellers, that come to our site every day. We have 250 million search queries happening in a day. This is on our search pages of eBay. And this would actually compare with any big search engine sites as well. At any given point of time right now, and in future this will just grow, we have 350 million active items on the site. There's a lot of selection for you guys. And I would bet if you have a word in your mind and if you just type in eBay, you'll find some items back. So it's a massive scale, a massive selection that we have it on eBay. How about the velocity? So we have 350 million items listed on the site. Does anybody buy it? Well, apparently yes, there are a lot of people who buy it. We sell MP3 player every 18 seconds. We sell a pair of women's jeans every 22 seconds. And we sell men's necktie every minute. Maybe not in Bay Area, but outside. And that's the beauty of it. So we have scale, and we have velocity, and we have to take care of both. A few more things about our scale. So at any given day, we serve 2 billion URL hits on our site. We have tens of millions of user sessions active on our site. Tens of billions of SQL hits. This is the connection with our databases. We have a very broad database deployments at eBay, and tens of billions of hits on our SQL databases. eBay moved to service orientation very recently, but we have made a great progress in that area. And we have billions of service calls happening from our applications. We have eventing and messaging system built in eBay, and that handles hundreds of millions of events every day. Now, when the request comes to eBay's data center and it flows through application servers to load balancers to databases, we actually log every minor detail about it. And for that reason, we have tens of petabytes of data in our system. That includes the business, and that includes just the logging metrics. So it's a massive scale. You can imagine this is the scale of our site. Now think back. In 1995, we were just a startup. And 17 years later, this is the scale of our site. Over that time, we changed our platform 5 times. And we did that while keeping our site up and running. Now that's a challenge, right? We cannot keep our site down even for a single minute, and we change everything under the hood 5 times. And this is the journey I want to take you with me. And it's a fairly interesting journey to me, and I would hope you'll find it interesting as well. So evolution, I like this picture because our journey is very much like human evolution. And I really liked it because the guy in the front says, "Stop following me." And I can relate with that. With every platform that we developed, we had a challenge how to get rid of the older platform. And being a platform guy, I sometimes yell very hard that, "Stop following me, the older platform, don't follow me." It's very hard for us to get rid of the older platforms. Okay, so I'll start with where eBay started in 1995. This is how eBay site looked like in 1995. It was called Auction Web, and it was written in a Perl script over a Labor Day weekend. I believe it was 3 days work. Now that was our homepage. And if you notice carefully, it says, take a look at the listings. There are always several hundreds auctions underway. Very, very humble start. Hundreds of auctions, and people still loved it. So this is how our site looked like for the first 4 years. And there was a massive growth that was happening. A lot of users were coming to eBay. It was a big story at that time. And at that point of time, we kind of thought about whether we should keep our site running on a Perl script or whether we should move to a different platform. And that's where we started our journey with the next generation platform. We called it V2, just version 2 of our platform. And this was truly our first professional web quality web framework. It was written in C++ because Java was still shaping up. J2E was not existent, and the choice we had was to work on C++. How about the JavaScript story? Well, we did not have much of a JavaScript story that time. We were still kind of beginning to realize that we need a robust JS support as well. But at that time, we did not have any JS framework. We were using global functions everywhere. No packaging, no minification, a lot of inline JS code. Our homepage at that point of time was referring to 35 JS files. Whatever happened to the site speed, I don't know. Now, this was a very simplistic view of 1999. We had a directory structure, JavaScript files dumped into somewhere, no versioning, and there were rollouts at 9 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Somebody could check in their files in it, and it would be rolled out at 4 o'clock. And at times, things did roll out, like people checking in their debug statements, and on the site we would see alert messages everywhere. But things happen. We were still learning at that point of time. So what happened during 1999 to 2002? I think this was the time when Java really took off. J2E really took off. And we seriously started thinking, is C++ the right strategy and right choice of language for eBay? And I think there was a long struggle that we came to a conclusion that we should move to Java. And that actually brought us to the third version of our stack which was completely based on J2E stack, and we called it V3, version 3. If you look at it, it follows very standard J2E patterns. You have a DAL access layer, you have a business objects, you have application objects, and you have command factory kind of an interface. And on top of that, for markup, we started using XSLT. So the way it would work is the Java code would generate an XML model, and XSLT would transform that into a markup. So we had something in place for presentation. We were maturing on the back-end side, but we were maturing a little bit on the presentation tier as well. Now, what happened to the JavaScript during that time? So we introduced, so again, this is the time where we did not have jQuery. We did not have YUI. There were not enough tools in the market that we could have just leveraged out of the box. So our smart engineers, they created EJ2, Enterprise JavaScript 2. It was our first JavaScript framework that we used all across the site. And it had really good concepts at that point of time. We were moving to object-oriented programming. We introduced the concept of packages, concatenation of JS files. We introduced the concept of JS build. The JS build would actually aggregate your JS files. Instead of referring to 35 different JS files, now you can refer to one. 95% of our inline JS code was removed. We applied the same concepts of packaging and aggregation for CSS. We started to realize that user experience is very critical, and people are spending a lot of time on eBay, and for that matter, we have to make our site faster. And the concept like, can we start caching our static content? Can we start caching our resources? That came into existence as well. Debugging, we were big fans of Visual Studio. We were using that extensively at that point of time to debug our JavaScript. And this may sound funny, but we had a multi-device support even though the phones were not out, the smartphones were just picking up. But we had some level of multi-device support. So besides supporting our website, we also supported web TV. And this was really, one influential guy making sure that we keep on supporting web TV for the rest of our lives. Now we don't, but we supported it for a very long time. So if you look at the history, we had you see that we moved from from Perl to C++ to Java on the back-end side. On the presentation side, we had no JavaScript framework. Now we have a very decent JavaScript framework. That's where we are standing right now in 2002, 2006. But there were problems. The problems with our presentation tier that was written in XSLT. So now if you think about it, you have a Java stack, you have XSLT tier, and then you have a JavaScript on top. And these were all three different teams. So if you get a bug that has to be fixed in all three layers, well, it would take a month because it has to go through all three teams. XSLT was definitely not very manageable in terms of code. There was a lot of logic that people started writing in XSLT, business logic. So there was a split. Half of the logic would be written in Java, other half in XSLT. Now to tackle this problem, if you look from an eBay's point of view, eBay was becoming a very strong Java player. We had a very smart Java developers during that time. We still have it, by the way. And what people started thinking about is, can we do the entire development in Java? Can we do end-to-end development in Java? So we get rid of XSLT, we get rid of all these tiers, we do the whole development in Java. And that's where our concept of V4 came into existence. And we thought we'll do some changes, but our developers took it to heart, and we did a whole bunch of changes. And I'm not going to go through all of this. But the concept was very simple. Can we do end-to-end development in Java? Can we write HTML in Java? Can we do CSS in Java? Java, of course, in Java. Can we do JS bindings in Java? Can we do all of these things in Java? And the answer was yes, we could do it. And we did it. And there were some really good benefits out of it. So now you don't have different three-tier story. You have programmers working on back-end as well as presentation tier in the same environment. You have a very good type checking. You can do your JS functions, the arguments that you're passing, you can actually check it compile time. You don't have to worry about runtime errors coming up. We created a concept of shared components. So now we started thinking about our page is nothing but blocks tied together. And each of the blocks is nothing but a component that we could share across pages. And the whole idea was if we share components, it would be very easy to create pages on the fly very quickly. So it was a great concept. Since we were heavy in Java, there was a lot of tooling that we developed. Toolings like we developed code generators for CSS and JavaScript and content. So it's easy for developers to create this kind of content. Editors for JavaScript, CSS, and content. So these are the tools to enable our developers to go fast. Very successful story. The whole site moved to new paradigm. We moved from XSLT to Java to the V4 platform. Now you may be asking me this question that why every 4 years we are changing our platform? And I'll give you reason every time what was the real driver behind it. So what happened with the V4? Why did we then have to change it to a next version? Well, we thought about our back-end developers. We thought we can make them productive and we can make them capable of doing changes end-to-end. But we forgot about the front-end developers a little bit. We actually expected our front-end developers to know Java because we asked them to write HTML in Java, CSS in Java, and they didn't like it. Presentation was closely tied to application. When you go to Java world, it is a little bit heavy. This is a JavaScript crowd, so I can talk about Java being that, even though I'm pretty close to Java. But it's a heavy language. If you do some changes and hot swap doesn't work, well, you need to restart your server. And the restart of server would take 10 minutes. That's a productivity killer right there for presentation tier guys who are just iterating very fast on UI. Huge investment. We invested quite a bit in our proprietary technologies. And this was the changing time. If you look at it, this is the time when jQuery and YUI were coming up. The frameworks, the open source frameworks, and the world was starting to think that that's the right choice. Now you see there is a little bit of digression that eBay took where we went more on Java and other world was going more on a JS framework and keeping them in a native form. So great framework, but we thought it was time to address the problem fully. Well, at least for the time being. So 2011, I don't know the end date of this platform, but this is our current platform. We call it Raptor. Now, very, very clear principles in Raptor. First principle, we will only use open source to build our stack and nothing else. We will contribute extensively back to the open source community. And third, if we find that there is a gap in the open source offering, we will build that software in-house, but we'll open source that. So these are 3 pillars of Raptor philosophy. So what was the whole idea behind it? Well, agility. We want our developers to be very agile and develop code very fast. Zero learning curve for engineers. So imagine you have a developer you're hiring from somewhere. They come to eBay and now they see the similar technologies as he or she has been using outside. So there is no real learning curve. So with that way, we get access to a larger talent pool, and we can keep up with the industries. If tomorrow industry moves to a completely new framework, new standard, we are in a far better position to adopt that into eBay. So these are some of the technologies that we use right now at eBay. We use MVC frameworks, so we could actually plug in any MVC framework into our Raptor framework. We can do Spring MVC, we could do JSF, we could do Lift, we can do any MVC framework into our Raptor framework with some amount of work. We are OSGI based stack, so we do believe in modularity. We want our code to be really modular, so if I change a part of code, I should be able to figure out what all dependencies are getting impacted as well. We moved to jQuery and Raptor.js. I think Patrick gave a nice talk on Raptor.js, and I'll cover a little bit about it. But a lot of developers at eBay now, they're using jQuery. We started using client-side rendering. So this is, again, new paradigm shift, and we started putting applications to use client-side rendering. We use Dust. We also use Raptor template. Dynamic resource aggregation. So the burden of aggregating JS and CSS is not during the build time. The developers can say and ask for an aggregation at runtime. It's very, very powerful in the sense that you don't have to worry about all the combinations your page may be downloading based on the user interaction. And this is truly our beginning of server-side JS. And I'll touch base on that point as well. So a little bit about Raptor.js. So this is, again, I'm going to highlight some of the open source contribution, the philosophy that I talked about, that we use open source software extensively. We contributed back in terms of fixes and enhancements as well. On the other hand, where we found the gaps, we started open sourcing our technologies. Raptor.js is one of them. It's not a framework, it's just a tool set. What it helps with is writing modular JavaScript. Very lightweight and optimized. It simplifies the dependency management between your modules. You could practically use Raptor.js with any other frameworks out there. You're not replacing your YUI or jQuery, you're working with them. It works on server side with Node and Rhino. So it works on both sides. And it's open source. You want to visit it, it's raptorjs.org. Some good tools that came out of our previous version of platform, and it continued to be our strength, is Widget. It's a Eclipse plugin that provides IDE support for JavaScript. Now we know JavaScript tools are not that robust, and this is one of the attempts to kind of provide that IDE environment for JavaScript. Again, it's an open source product. What does it do? It does code assistance. It's a very Java-like thing in a sense that you can do control space and it will tell you all the JavaScript functions that you can use. Code search, again, you do Control-Shift-T and you can start searching for a JavaScript file. Syntax and semantic checking. So again, this is great, right? I don't have to worry about my runtime issues. It would catch it during the editing time. Execution and debugging, so it had support for call hierarchies, so you can exactly figure out who's calling your function and what is the depth of your call. And it's again an open source and available on a site eBay.opensource.org. And this actually would list most of the open source software that we are running at eBay. QLIO, this is an interesting story. This is a server-side story of JS. And this is a beginning of eBay using the server-side JS. So what is QLIO? QLIO is a node-based framework, and it essentially addresses the problem of orchestration and aggregation of HTTP API calls. So I'll give you a simple example. If I'm a mobile device and I have to make 10, 15 API calls, yeah, I will start making them. The next thing I'll think about is, wow, I'm making 15 calls sequentially. I'm not getting the performance back. Can I start doing can I start parallelizing them? Can I do orchestration with my calls? And if you think about it, slowly you will actually end up developing a very complex logic in your consumer. What does QLIO does? It actually provides the same flexibility in a SQL-inspired language. So you could actually call multiple HTTP API calls. They would be orchestrated. You can select the fields out of it just like how would you do a database call and expose an interface that your client likes. So with QLIO, I can write an interface for mobile, I can write an interface for web, I can write an interface for iPad, a tablet device. And the overhead of doing this orchestration is fairly low. The cost of developing it is very low. So again, it's an open source product. Quite a few companies are leveraging it. You should visit httpql.io. Server-side JS, what is the future? So eBay is taking very seriously server-side JS story. We do believe that Node is a pretty good framework, and we do believe we can make a huge difference by having our Node stack, or maybe leveraging some other Node stack. One of the thoughts was, if we take our orchestration engine like QLIO, and if I put Raptor.js or templating language together, suddenly I have a stack where I can do end-to-end development. I can do my UI in Raptor, and I can do my orchestration in QLIO. And I have a very decent story. And you may ask, why would you do it? You already have a Java framework. Well, that's the philosophy nowadays that we truly embrace, is that we are not going to be stuck with one framework. As industry moves, we want to move with it. We truly believe that there are applications at eBay that could be benefited with node-based stack, where time to market is important, where the applications is, it doesn't have too much logic in it, business logic built into it. Can we use that? It becomes an effective way to attracting talent as well. And the last thing is, if we don't keep up with the progresses that are happening in the industry, 4 years down the line, we are going to take that big hit. We are going to develop this big framework and move the code base again to this new framework. We want this transition to be much smoother this time. So, if I have to summarize, there are 5 generations of platform I talked about. Started from Perl, we went to C++, we had a very strong Java story. Then we moved to Java on presentation in Java with V4. And now the philosophy is everything open source. We want to use open source, we want to contribute to open source, we want to develop open source. The JavaScript story, I walk you through that as well. And it has evolved to a point that we are not just using client-side templating and JavaScript all over eBay website, but we are using JavaScript on the server side with products like QLIO and the node-based stack as well. So in summary, our journey is actually very much like the journey outside. I mean, if you look at it, C++ was hot in 1999, and Java became really hot in 2002. And we kind of followed the similar trends with few turns and twists. Yeah, we took some road which others didn't take it, but that's what happens with company of this size. Migration has always been challenging, right? Because as I'm saying, our uptime always is very, very high. And if we have to change platform underneath, it takes a lot of energy to make sure that we don't impact the site. Every platform that I went through, there is no criticism on the way how we evolved. Every platform served the purpose at that point of time. It made sure that our site was up and scaling all the time. It's just that how the industry was moving, we also kept on making changes. And we will keep on making those changes. Site availability never impacted. And we always have to make sure our business comes first. And technology has to support the business, not the other way around. And the journey is not over. We still keep on evolving, and we'll keep on also contributing back to the community. So that's about it. That's my contact, jdesai@ebay.com. You can choose to contact me, and thank you for your time. Okay.